I will share my limited knowledge with you.
Much farther than ours.
Well, only because I've been doing this a while. But this is going to be general rules for caring for tropical plants. If you have a specific plant, it's advisable that you research that plant and see if there's anything specific that it needs. And I'll address that later. But we're going to talk about watering them properly, humidity and temperature levels, providing choosing the best soil, and fertilizing plants. And interspersed in here are some of my plants. That's one of my favorite tropical hibiscus I have in my backyard. They're in pots, so they go in the greenhouse when it starts getting cool, because if you leave them out, they freeze to death. So we'll look at proper watering. Most tropical plants like soil that stays evenly moist, and some house plants can tolerate being occasionally underwatered. The main thing that kills plants, all of them, tropicals and everything, the most is overwatering. If you keep it too wet, the roots rot and you kill them. And one of the easiest ways to see if your plant needs water is stick your finger in the soil, about the first inch or so, and feel if it's damp and see if you come out with some soil on your finger. If it feels wet, it doesn't need water, obviously. If you tend to forget watering, there are the water devices that, like the bulbs you stick in the water that will in the soil, that will slowly release water into the soil. So it'll help keep it evenly moist. Have you seen the moisture and light gauges you can buy at Lowe's and other plant places? Those are very handy to have. Because if you have any doubts, you can just poke that in, look at the meter, and say, yeah, I better water this one.
How far down are you supposed to poke it?
About 1 to 2 inches. You're looking at that first 2 inches of soil.
And what defines a tropical plant?
Would you believe that's a plant from the tropics? So we're talking about tropical islands, or even South America, or India in the tropical forests.
So not Abilene.
No, Abilene is not tropical, and our biggest problem here with growing the plants is the lack of humidity. Okay, shut up, phone. We get so dry here that it really stresses the plants. And it's hard to give them enough water to compensate. And so you might need to mist plants. One thing to remember, though, is tropical plants that have fuzzy leaves, like the African violet, they don't like their leaves wet. They need to be watered from the bottom, because the fuzz on the leaves protects them from diseases and insects. So this is a shot down my backyard. Every one of those pots is a tropical hibiscus or other tropical plant. Humidity. Wherever the plant is, they're going to like it humid because they're from the tropics. And you can use a humidifier near your plants, or if you have a whole house humidifier. But I learned recently that I could turn that off, and because I have a sunroom where I water my plants once a week, the house stays at 50% humidity, where the humidifier, I have that many plants in the house. So, and like I was saying, alternatively, you can mist your plants regularly. The fuzzy leaves. Also, you want to water these and trailing plants from the bottom to prevent rotting stems. So fuzzy leaf plants like African violet. If you water them from the top, the stems will rot and you kill the plant. And another way for humidity, to increase humidity, put your plant in a tray of pebbles and put a little water to keep the water below the level of the pebbles, so any roots coming out won't get drowned and rot. And of course, you can get the little thermometers with a humidity device on it, a hygrometer, and it'll tell you what humidity you have in the room where the plant is. And here's the kicker. Tropical plants need warm temperatures between 65 and 85. When night temps fall below 50, they should be brought inside. When in direct sunlight and high temps, they will be stressed. My tropical hybrid are stressed all summer long when we hit the dry spell. And I'm constantly pulling yellow leaves off of them so the plant's not trying to repair the leaf. So keep them fresh. Now, on the tropical hibiscus, I learned that they can take a temperature down to possibly 45 degrees at night if it's only for a couple of hours. So if you look at your phone app and look at the temperature overnight, if it's only going to be 45 for a couple of hours, it'll probably be okay outside. But once it consistently falls below 50 for several hours, 4 or 5 hours at night, it's time to bring them in, either in a greenhouse or in a sunroom or some other sheltered place. And of course, when you bring them in, you want to make sure they're not in a cold draft. Don't put them near the air conditioner ducts. And if you don't have double pane windows, you don't want them too close to the windows because they'll get chilled from that. There's another shot. Okay, some tropical plants require a little light and some require a lot of light. And I found out after doing a little research, if you have a plant that only likes a little light and you put it in bright light, it'll burn, possibly. Or other plants such as croton and rubber tree, and I happen to have a rubber tree next to the window, it hadn't burned it, but it got very leggy. It's very tall and the leaves on top. It's not a lush plant like it used to be. So if you can't move a light-loving plant to a brighter area, think about getting grow lights. I have a couple of grow lights in my sunroom. If we go through really dark periods, I can kick those on and give the plants a little supplemental light. And of course, in my greenhouse, I have a whole line of grow lights down the center. So
rubber is a plant?
As a matter of fact.
Oh, really?
Yeah. A lot of plants I was looking at that I thought, gee, I didn't know that was tropical. And some people I've run into, like you folks that came to my backyard and saw that Ixora with the beautiful little orange flowers on it. I was talking to a girl at the nursery and said, I can't keep mine alive. And I said, well, do you take it in the greenhouse in the wintertime? She said, no. And I said, it's a tropical plant. You got to take it inside. I've had mine for years and years now.
So can you miss rubber tree leaves then?
You can. Mine hasn't needed that.
Just needed the light.
It didn't need quite so much light. Had I put it across the room from the windows, it may have stayed a more lush, smaller plant instead of getting out of control. Now, this is what I'm talking about, leggy. This is a bromeliad, and you've probably seen those. They're usually about this tall, and they have the bright leaves on top. That's not a bloom, by the way. That's just colored leaves. So I put this one by the window, and it got out of control. So, choosing the best soil. I've been using just basic potting soil, and that seems to work okay in most cases. But if you tend to overwater your plants, you can add perlite. It has properties of filtering and draining the water through, so it'll dry out a little quicker. If you tend to forget to water your plants, mix peat moss or vermiculite in the potting soil. They help retain moisture a little longer. And some plants require special soil, so do research on what your plant needs. If you happen to need a more alkaline soil, you can raise the pH with lime, and if it needs to be more acidic, you can use sulfur to do that. And of course, they make acidifiers and other things. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We're talking about soil.
Yes.
When these plants when they get too big for a pot, do you put them in the next larger pot?
We're going to get to that.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. And I just put up here a basic soil mix might be 1 part peat moss, 1 part perlite, 1 part vermiculite, 1 part compost, and 1 part sand. But again, do research on your specific plant to see what it's. And since you brought up that question, tropical plants, almost any plant for that matter that's in a pot, needs to be repotted every 2 to 3 years because they do deplete the soil. I pulled some of mine out of the pots and there wasn't any soil left. It was all roots. And yes, if you have the room for a bigger pot, go one size up, which is usually considered 2 inches. So if you've got a 10-inch pot, you want to go up to a 12-inch pot if you've got the room for it. Now, my tropical hibiscus I was showing you there, they're about this tall, getting bigger. I have to cut them off at this height every year to get them inside my greenhouse, to get them through the door. This past year, I had to repot them all just because I wanted all the same pots. So I had to cut a lot of root structure off to get them to fit in the new pots. So they're struggling a little bit right now, but they're blooming like crazy. So they're building root structure and they're doing their thing.
When you worked on that, removing roots, did you do?
Depended on what I needed to do to fit it in a new pot. Some of them I had in these big funny shape with a big bottom pot. I had to cut the pots to get the thing out. And then I took an old hand saw, old crosscut saw, and just cut it into shape. Cut the bottom off, cut the sides down, put it in, put fresh soil in, watered it in real good. And I did this before the fall hit, so I put them into the greenhouse so they could recover in a closed environment. And I think I may have weakened them, and that's why the white flies attacked them. But when I brought them out, they were infested with white flies, so I've been spraying insecticidal soap and neem oil on them to knock down that population. And I've got it pretty well controlled on the hibiscus and my tropicals, but I found out they like every other plant in my yard too. So now I have to twice a week go spray everything in my backyard. I mean everything. It's about a little over 2 gallons. So
When you took those out of the pots,
yes,
and did you wash them off, or the soil, or did you just leave that clump of soil that was?
I left what was bound in the roots there, but I cut it down so it would go in the pot with enough room to put fresh soil in it, so they had new nutrients from that.
Do you have to put it inside a greenhouse, or do you put it inside your house?
The tropical hibiscus, the big plants, go in my greenhouse.
But they will do okay just inside your house?
Yeah, if I brought them in the sunroom, although that would take up a lot of room in my sunroom because I have so many of them. I have 13 tropical hibiscus in those big pots, and then an Ixora and a Mandevilla in the same size pots. So that's 15 of those great big pots. If I brought those in the sunroom, there wouldn't be any room for the Wi-Fi.
But you only put them in the greenhouse during the winter?
Yes. When the nighttime temps fall consistently below 50, I bought one of these great big hand trucks by Rubbermaid that's used for hauling those great big trash cans. So I can drag those up on it and haul them over to the greenhouse and put them in there. And in my greenhouse, I have all automated watering. I've run the little the actual half-inch poly pipe around the whole thing, and then little quarter-inch tubing with drippers on it that I can put in each pot once they're in there. And I have a little timer on the water, and it gets 30 minutes of watering once a week while it's in the greenhouse. That's all it needs because the humidity is contained.
On your mandorla, do you have?
I do. It's one of the little obelisk type. And it's really looking beautiful right now. It's blooming like crazy. By the heat of the summer, it'll stop blooming and look terrible. But right now, while it's still fairly cool and humid, it's doing great.
So is a bougainvillea considered a tropical then?
Yes, it is, as a matter of fact. That's my bougainvillea right there, and this is my mandevilla right here, behind these daylilies.
Did you mention Ixora? What's
Ixora, I-X-O-R-A. I don't know if I put a picture on here of it, but anyway, we'll move on. Maybe I have one on there, but if not, I know I have one on my phone I can show you. Anyway, fertilizing the plants, I was able to buy specific hibiscus food. And in the summertime, when they're doing all this blooming, you need to put a tablespoon of that on each plant once a month so they get a little food consistently. Once they go in the greenhouse, I feed them, take them in. They don't get any for the winter. They don't need it. But you bring them out, feed them, and then it's once a month after that.
Is that called hibiscus food?
It is, as a matter of fact. And the brand I had, another company bought it out. I was having to search for it. I said, okay, where did this stuff go? And it's another company had bought them out. So anyway, that's what I was saying about feeding them. Research your plant for any specific needs. And I would caution you about doing a Google search because the AI pops up and gives you an aggregate answer, meaning it's gone to all kinds of sources all over the internet and drawn an answer out that may or may not be correct. So scroll down and see if you can find a nursery of some kind, people who actually sell the plants. And they usually have a better answer. And tropical plant fertilizer is ideal, but a general purpose fertilizer will work also. Just make sure you don't over-fertilize and burn your plant. And organic fertilizers are good for the plants. They may burn when using chemical varieties. Compost is also very good. If you're composting and have that, that's really good to spread on top and let the nutrients soak in.
Do you make your own or buy one?
Don't have any room to compost. So, in talking about granular fertilizers, if y'all remember the old Osmocote you get for houseplants, that'll work too. Is a bug bothering you? Do I need to come spray you?
No, you said bugs and they showed up. So I didn't thought you had bugs.
Here's another shot, some more tropical hibiscus, and I have flower pots that hang on the fence, and they're just, I got so many flowers back there, it's ridiculous. Anyway, that's my patio. And those,
Zora in that picture?
no, those chairs are pulled on the patio because the round table where those chairs go is right under the pecan tree leaves, and the birds tend to make a mess of them. So they're pulled under there until we want to go sit out, and then we can pull them out there. And this is what my greenhouse looks like when it's almost full. That's not full.
Do you repot your airplane plant every 2-3 years, or has that one been
You know,
left alone?
I don't worry about those too much. If it dies, I'll just take one of these little guys and stick him in the dirt, and I got another one. They are so easy to propagate. But this whole bench gets filled with plants. I've got like a sago palm and plumbago and ivy in a pot that comes in there, and it gets so jammed up, that's as far as I can get right here when I open the door. So there's a plan. It has to be loaded from the back forward.
So is a plumbago considered a tropical plant?
No, but it's in a planter under the patio. It's one of my wife's planters. So I just bring it in there to preserve it. I don't want it out there and freeze to death. It could be put in the ground, and once it's established, it would come back year after year.
Not at my house.
Not at your house?
I love that plant each year.
Well, my backyard is unique in that it's on the southeast side, so I'm blocked from the northwest cold winds. So most of my plants, like Duranta, I put in the ground, and a lot of people, theirs never come back. Mine's about 2 feet from the sunroom, the brick, and yeah, it dies off, cut it off, next year it comes back. Yes.
Is that part of your drip system going up there by the root?
As a matter of fact,
Black?
yes, those little black tubes are for the plants I put on the bench. The others run around the side and come out into the pots.
When you bring your plants to the greenhouse or your house, do you spray them with anything first to make sure they don't have any pests?
No, and I should have last year.
Because I worry about that a lot.
Yes.
When I'm bringing something in from outside.
And
Would
on
the
my
same
plants in the house, I found houseplant systemic insecticide that you can sprinkle on the soil, and then it soaks into the plant, and it'll kill most of the bugs. Unfortunately, or fortunately, in my sunroom, I have a regular ivy that has grown up the wall, around this room, all the way around. One strand's all the way around. The second strand's maybe about 3 feet from completing the circuit, and probably 6 or 7 other strands that are halfway around the room. So the room is covered in ivy. I've got these little white moths that live in that stuff, and I can't seem to get rid of them, but I bought the little stem devices with the sticky pad in them, the little ultraviolet lights. I catch all kinds of gnats and flies, but there's always more. Anyway, this is something I wanted to show you. That bromeliad that I showed you was real leggy and tall by the window. I learned that it takes them forever to bloom. That is a bromeliad bloom. The colored leaves you see on them, that's not a bloom. And then, after they bloom, they put on a pup. That's how they reproduce. That is a pup. And I learned that when it's about a third of the size of the parent, and I don't think I'm going to let it get that tall, but once it's about a third of the size, you break it off, put it in soil, and you got another bromeliad.
The host mother plant lives? It's not like what is it, the agaves or whatever, when they send out something like that, they die?
No, it says the mother may put on more pups.
How long does
Yeah.
it take for it to get that big?
I don't even remember when I got that thing. It's been so many years. Maybe, guessing, maybe 15 years.
So it's blown once in that 15?
Yes. That's what I'm saying. It takes forever for it to be. Yeah. You've heard of the flamingo flower? Flamingo plants, they put on this really funny looking bloom. Different colors. This one happens to be that deep purple. You'll find some of them orange. About researching your plant. This one was not blooming. I got it because a friend of mine in church passed away, and his wife asked me to take some of the plants. I brought it home, I repotted it. It was alive, doing well, but it wouldn't bloom. I happened to go to my office, and they had one in there blooming away. And I said, boy, mine won't bloom. And the lady said, yeah, you have to water it with ice cubes twice a week. I said, really? Yeah. I went home and put ice cubes on it. It wasn't a couple of days, I had blooms. So, different plants, different needs. And I think that's the end of my pictures on there. So, any more questions?
How did you get into tropical plants?
They were pretty. And my late wife saw hibiscus and wanted one. So I bought one. It's my oldest plant. It's little pink hibiscus. And I was in the hospital, and my current wife, I know that sounds funny, but my current wife, I told her those plants have to go in the greenhouse. You got to cut them back. Well, she cut this sucker down this short. Oh my goodness. I said, not my oldest hibiscus. Yeah. So anyway, but it has survived, and it's now about this tall. It's coming back with a vengeance and blooming away. So if you take care of your plants, they can last a long time. And the main thing, like all master gardeners say, if you don't kill something 2 or 3 times, you're not doing it right.
Can you put hibiscus in the ground at all?
Tropicals, not here. We are a temperature zone 8A. We get too cold in the wintertime, they will freeze to death. Because like I say, they can't take much less than 50 at night.
But you can't cover them with one of those.
I brought mine out too early one year, and I went and bought a whole bunch of those covers to cover them up. And it saved them that one night. Now I got all these covers.
So what's the hardy hibiscus, they say?
That's not a tropical plant per se. It's actually a swamp mallow. It can go in the ground, and it will come back year after year if you have the proper soil. I've managed to kill 2 of them. Just do not like the soil at my house, and I didn't do the proper amendments, and they just croaked.
So is there
Go ahead.
a species name then you're looking for that one versus the ones you have?
Well, you can just look for hardy hibiscus, and you'll find those. But yeah, there's all kinds of species names for all these things, and a lot of them in the same genus have different names, so it gets really complicated if you're going to go that route. I just look at mine and say, this one's pretty, it's yellow. But that first one I showed you, his name is Butterball. And then the one that bloomed like crazy right after the garden tour, everybody came to my house for a garden tour, and some of the plants were blooming, but not really going crazy. I wake up the next morning and walk out, and they just exploded. I said, of course.
So there's a hibiscus, and my friend has it down in Granbury,
Uh-huh.
and it has really dark leaves.
Okay,
She grows it in the ground,
okay.
and she doesn't even cover it during the winter. Is it because it's,
That's probably a hardy hibiscus, because if it was a tropical, like I say, it would die.
so there's different ones in the hardy hibiscus? Hibiscus.
Oh, yeah.
tongue-tied.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch.
Oh, okay. Because it's beautiful, and she
Oh, yeah. The ones I had, while they were alive, put out a bloom that would have covered both my hands. It was that big. It was a huge bloom on it.
hers do too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what that is. My hardies like this, when they're really, or my tropicals, when they're doing really well, I can put my hand behind the bloom and hide my hand because they're that big, but they're nothing compared to those hardy hibiscus. They easily are the size of a bread plate,
Yeah.
so. Okay, any more questions?
John, I have no idea, and I don't even know if this would work, but You know, you're talking about your rubber tree
Yeah,
getting real tall.
uh-huh.
I wonder if you could cut it off. and-
Well, I'm going to try that. I'm going to have to repot it, and I'm going to try and shape it and hope I don't kill it.
You might even try, if it doesn't have any leaves, I don't know. I'm guessing.
Well, it's like,
I wonder if you could take hunks of it, you know, of the
Stems, yeah.
stick and put it in the ground.
well, I'll read up on that because I looked up propagating my tropical hibiscus. I could do it in my greenhouse if I'd put misters in and keep the humidity consistently high. Then you can take a cutting and do the proper root hormones and cut the leaves off, just leave a couple, put it in the dirt and keep it watered. But man, that's a lot of work and I already have too many. So I don't think I want to experiment with that.
I've never done a rubber tree that way, but
No,
it seems like
and-
it'd be a good idea.
And I have a kalanchoe that's gotten out of hand. It's just limbs all over the place, and it needs to be repotted. And I have a little variegated one next to it. I want to put them in the same pot. But there's always something to do. You can always be working with your plants. Oh, and I was going to say, when you look up your plants, look at something like in my sunroom, I have a Dieffenbachia. You need to read up on your plants, research them, see if they're poison or have any other bad characteristics. This Dieffenbachia has these big, beautiful leaves, and it's from India. Very easy to propagate, but the sap from it is an irritant. And if you get the sap on you, it can really irritate you. So it's not good for animals to eat. But plain ivies, your normal everyday ivy, that has an alkaloid poison in the sap. So you shouldn't have animals in there chewing on your ivies. But I did learn when I had cockatiels in the house that a safe plant is the spider plant, or airplane plant, or helicopter plant, whatever you want to call it. They specified this is not a bird treat, but if they do get in it and chew on it, it's not going to kill them.
Is the Dieffenbachia the one that has the twist in the leaves?
No, no. I thought I put a picture of it in there, but let's see. Guess I didn't put enough pictures. Dun, dun, dun. Oh my goodness. Never mind. Yeah, so many pictures. But this one, it grows a big stalk, about 2 inches, inch and a half, 2 inches, and puts on the big leaves and just keeps growing. I've had to cut it off twice at the ceiling, bring it down a couple of feet, and it got up there again, and I said,
This one, where it got tall and headed up to the ceiling?
that would be the one.
Okay.
I cut it off twice, and then I got tired of that, so I cut it off at the ground level because it had put a little shoot out at the ground level. And I cut both the big stalks off. Sure enough, it's already up this tall again, 2 of them. So it's almost, to me, impossible to kill, but but I propagated one for my granddaughter, and she was asking me about, are the leaves supposed to fall off? And I said, the bottom ones die. It just keeps getting taller and taller, putting on new ones at the top. But it's a beautiful plant.
In your plant knowledge, is there something that gives you a hint on the pot that you really should have it in, size-wise? I mean, I'm looking at these, and these are not big pots, these are big plants.
I think mine's about, my pot, inch pot that this is in, and of course the roots are warping the pot out because it's a plastic pot. So it could go in a bigger pot, but I'm limited on room. I can't keep going potting bigger and bigger and bigger. You know, at some point, you got to stop and say, I just can't do anything bigger than this. Yes.
Okay, is there a difference between using Neiman oil and Dawn soap?
Okay, yeah. Like I say, when I used the Dawn and burned the leaves on my cannas, I read up on it, and you're supposed to use Castile soap. And I got this particular bottle at Natural Grocers. And if you see, pure Castile. Castile soap is all vegetable. There are no harsh chemicals in it whatsoever. This one, do what?
How do you spell that?
Castile. I bought 2 of these today. I thought I'd bring one in here and show you. But they call it magic soap. It's baby unscented. The first bottle I bought was at Michael's. They had it, and then I went back to get some, and I couldn't find it. So I stopped at Natural Grocers, and they had it. And you mix...
Ace has it too.
Do they? Yeah, 2.5 tablespoons in a gallon of water. And then I add a tablespoon of neem oil. And the soap, when it sprays on an insect, it washes off the waxy coating on the bottom, and they tend to dry out. The neem oil coats them, and they can't breathe, so you suffocate them. So using those 2 together in my sprayer, I've been able to knock down that nasty little white flies. And I learned on those suckers, they hatch out about every 5 to 10 days. And I remember my brother telling me back in the 70s that he had them on some of his plants, and they would hatch out every 4 days, so he was having to spray them every 4 days. And I'm saying, he was right.
Will that kill the eggs of the?
Well, now they have 4 different life cycles. The mother will lay like 100 eggs in a little circle. She'll sit there and just turn the circle laying those eggs. And they hatch out, and there's this funny looking clear thing that sits there sucking sap, and then something breaks out of it. It's not exactly a pupa or a larvae, and it goes on to another stage, but they're a weird little creature. And so, again, research. You got to look this stuff up if you're having a problem. So, anything else? That's a little short, but I ran through it.
I want to thank everyone for coming. Wanted to remind you that we are, as a Master Garden organization, we are on Facebook and on YouTube. All of the lectures that we do give, we've been trying to record at least for about the last 3 years. And so all of those are on our YouTube channel for the most part. So go subscribe and get all of those. We've got a little bit of everything on the discussions that we have there. Anything from garden planting, vegetable gardens, to tropicals, to butterfly gardening, everything you can think of. So a lot of good stuff and a lot of good information. We will have the same presentation next Friday. If you happen to have another question, you need to come ask Don. Feel free. We'll be downtown library at 10 a.m. Then we have Saturday seminars, which will be the last Saturday of the month. This month it is on, what is it on this month? Bulbs and cuttings. So it should be kind of interesting. And then next month, we've got fruit trees at the library, and then for our Saturday seminar, we will be doing victory gardens and talking a lot about the victory gardens, some of the history of it, and then a lot of information on just general vegetable gardening around the area. So thank you all for coming, and hope to see you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you.